All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Welcome. So we have, today we have Mike Pence humiliating himself on Jordan Peterson's show. That should be fun. We have some new numbers that just came out about Donald Trump in the wake of his 37 crimes coming to light. And look, it may surprise you a little bit. We may be bucking the trend just a touch, if I don't say so myself. And then we also have Bernie Sanders goes after big pharma executives to their faces. So that's interesting as well. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it here. So one of the things about the media that annoys me to no end is the fact that they don't know how to focus on the right things. Or as I like to call it, their outrage meter is broken. Their outrage meter is miscalibrated, and they get angry at like mean tweets or comedians saying something controversial, but they lose sight of the things that actually matter. So I try on this show, albeit probably flawed, to focus on some things that are very important. Now, I also discuss people having sex with trees, as you all saw recently. I mix it up a little bit. We have some fun as well, but this is the stuff that really matters and is super important. So look at this. 87-year-old Floridian eligible for Medicaid kicked off anyway. This is Ron DeSantis' Florida. From seniors to our children, tens of thousands of Floridians just lost their health care coverage. For many of them, that should not have happened, but it did when Florida required that all Medicaid recipients be recertified. Procedural problems followed. Basically what happened, here's the gist of it. During COVID, there was a temporary expansion of Medicaid where if there was even a slight question as to whether or not you applied, you applied. We have a pandemic. We're going to expand Medicaid to help people. Well, now that they got rid of the emergency declaration during the pandemic time period, in a lot of these red states, they're like, we're just going to go ahead and cut back on Medicaid spending again, which, of course, would kick more people off of Medicaid. So you just created a bureaucratic nightmare and a headache with all this red tape where people have to reapply to be able to get their health care, and it's not working. So Shirley Herberger is this 87-year-old woman that they're talking about. She's been on Medicaid for years. Medicaid pays for her home health aid. So she lost her coverage, even though she's still eligible. But the Florida Department of Children and Families, or DCF, kicked the 87-year-old off of the program 2 weeks ago. Wow. So this woman needs a live-in aid, and now she doesn't have it because of some bureaucratic bullshit where she's kicked off of Medicaid even though she qualifies for Medicaid. She went on to say that with her home health aid, quote, she makes me something to eat, helps me get up and put my clothes on. You know, it just makes the day start out better. Unbelievable, man. So now, by the way, this woman tried to jump through all the hoops that were put in front of her, like filled out the paperwork, sent it in. It took them like 6 months or something crazy to get back to her. And they were like, oh, you know, you're missing like this form or that form. And so, sorry, you're not going to get the health care that you need. Now, I give you this story because this just came out, right? This came out on June 16th. An 87-year-old woman losing her Medicaid, which she needs for the home health aid. Okay. But guys, there's 250,000 Floridians who got kicked off of Medicaid because Ron DeSantis doesn't want to keep the Medicaid expansion in place. So this is in Common Dreams. They say 250,000 Floridians get kicked off Medicaid as DeSantis rakes in big donor cash. Quote, one of these individuals is a 7-year-old boy in remission from leukemia who is now unable to access follow-up and potentially life-saving treatments. Hundreds of thousands of poor Floridians have been kicked off Medicaid in recent weeks as the Republican Governor Ron DeSantis travels the country for his 2024 presidential bid and rakes in campaign cash from big donors. Florida is among the states that have begun unwinding pandemic-era rules, barring states from removing people from Medicaid during the public health emergency. Late last year, Congress reached a bipartisan deal to end the so-called continuous coverage requirements, opening the door to a massive purge of life-saving healthcare programs. A dozen states have released early data on the number of people removed from Medicaid as they restart eligibility checks, a cumbersome process that many people fail to navigate. So far, the statistics are alarming. More than 600,000 people across the U.S. were stripped of their health care since April. 600,000. Nearly 250,000 have been booted from Medicaid live in Florida, whose governor is a longtime opponent of public health care programs. Jonathan Cohn wrote Sunday, DeSantis, quote, has refused to support the Affordable Care Act's Medicaid expansion for the state, which is the biggest reason that more than 12% of Floridians don't have health care. That's the fourth highest rate in the country. But DeSantis, who has said he wants to make America Florida, appears unmoved by the staggering number of people losing Medicaid in his state as he hits the campaign trail. The governor relied heavily on large contributions to bring in more than $8 million during the first 24 hours of his presidential bid. Prior to formally launching his 2024 campaign, DeSantis traveled the country in private jets on the dime of rich and sometimes secret donors, and he's currently facing a Federal Election Commission complaint for unlawfully transferring more than $80 million from a state committee to a super PAC supporting his White House bid. So this is what this guy is doing. This is what this guy is doing while 250,000 people in his own state lose their health care. 7-year-olds with leukemia can't get the care they need, can't get the follow-up treatments. An 87-year-old can't get her live-in aid. And I'm just giving you 2 examples. How many examples are out there just like this guy and this woman? How many examples? In Florida, a 4-person household must make less than $39,900 in annual income to qualify for Medicaid. The state's early data indicates that 44% of those who have lost coverage in recent weeks were removed for procedural reasons, like a failure to return paperwork on time. So let's not mince words here. People will die because of this policy choice from Ron DeSantis in Florida. People will die. This is astonishing, man. This is astonishing, and I want to repeat it. Nobody's talking about this. Shout out to Common Dreams for doing a story. Shout out to that local news station who covered the 87-year-old. But, like, there are literally 250,000 similar stories out there in Florida. And shame on CNN, shame on MSNBC, shame on Fox News, shame on the nightly news for not talking about this until they're blue in the face. The Congressional Budget Office recently estimated that around 15.5 million people, including 5 million children, are likely to lose Medicaid coverage nationwide over the next year and a half as states resume eligibility checks made necessary by a system that doesn't guarantee health care to all as a right. Let me repeat that. 15.5 million people will lose their health care, including 5 million children. You got to fix your outrage meter. You got to fix your outrage meter because it is just flat out broken. If this is not the stuff that's on top of mind. This is a travesty, man. We already live in a country that doesn't have universal health care. We temporarily made an improvement on that by giving a lot of people Medicaid during the pandemic, and they're already rolling the clock back. We have 500,000 medical bankruptcies every year in this country. 500,000. Something like 1 in 3 Americans either have medical debt or have dealt with medical debt at one time or another. We have an archaic, primitive system here, and it's held together with duct tape and bubble gum, and now we're going even further in the wrong direction. And by the way, it's not like the Democratic president's doing anything to fix it, right? He ran on a public option. He didn't get his public option. He didn't lift a finger for it. He expanded Obamacare by $64 billion, but even that ain't nearly enough. And the system itself is nowhere near good enough. We need Medicare for all. And every day we don't have it is another day somebody might die for lack of health care. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.